My sister-in-law said, leave your wife or lose the family to my husband. Now we live without them. It's funny how, when I look back on everything, it all felt like a series of cracks forming under my feet, just tiny fissures at first. I didn't see them for what they were, but now it's all so clear. My name is Sophie. I'm 32 years old, a graphic designer who loves nothing more than a good cup of coffee and a quiet Sunday. I'm the kind of person who keeps to herself, values her space, and craves a little peace. I met James 5 years ago, we fell in love quickly, and before I knew it, we were sharing a life together. The kind of life people dream of, a modest home with a creaky porch swing, a dog named Charlie who lives for belly rubs, and weekends spent trying new recipes or simply watching sunsets. James is everything I never thought I'd need. He's kind and thoughtful, and he has a way of making everything feel easy. He doesn't believe in drama. He believes in the simple pleasures. But that's where things got complicated. James' family, that's a different story. I'm not sure how they are with him, but with me, it's like trying to fit into a puzzle that's never meant to have my piece. I don't think they've ever seen me as an equal, just some outsider they have to tolerate. It's the way they look at me sometimes as if I'm a foreign object in their neat little world. And trust me, it's not just a feeling. I've heard the subtle jabs, the sideways comments, all under the guise of help or family advice. They're so good at it, they don't even realize how suffocating they've become. Take Margaret, for example. My mother-in-law. She's the matriarch of the family, a woman with a smile so wide it feels almost fake. She's got this energy, it's like she's constantly rehearsing her role in a play where everyone else has to be cast as background characters. Her house? Immaculate. Her life? Picture perfect. But it's all for the show. I could never live up to her image of what family should be. And then there's Sarah, James' sister. At first glance, she's the golden child. Sweet, polite, and full of self-assurance. She's always at the center of everything. She's the one who's always putting on a good face, acting like she's just trying to help, but behind those well-manicured nails, she's a storm brewing. Everything about her screams that she's got something up her sleeve. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel threatened by her sometimes, not just because of her effortless charm, but because I've seen the way she manipulates things without anyone noticing. She's got a way of winning hearts, but only until she's done with them. James, bless him, doesn't see it. He's caught in the middle of it all, trying to keep the peace. He doesn't even notice how they make me feel like an outsider in my own home. When his mom calls or Sarah needs help with something, he drops everything, never questioning it. I used to think it was just me, that maybe I was overreacting, being paranoid. But the longer I stayed in their world, the more I realized just how far they would go to make sure I didn't belong. And it was hard to make James see it. He wanted to believe they meant well, that they were just doing what families do. But there's a difference between helping and suffocating. I remember the first time I realized how deep it ran. It was one of those weekends where everything seemed fine. James and I were in the middle of a quiet evening at home when his mom called to invite us over for just a quick dinner. We'd seen her and Sarah just a few days before, but when it came to his family, I knew that quick never meant quick. Sure, Mom, James said, his voice full of that warmth I loved, the kind of tone that always made me feel like everything would be okay. I gave a small smile and nodded. Okay, I'll just throw something together for us. But I knew what this dinner meant. It wasn't about food or catching up. It was a subtle attempt to plant seeds. I felt the familiar weight on my chest as we drove to their house, the walls of their pristine home staring down at me like judgmental eyes. We walked in and there was Margaret with her perfect posture, her smile that never wavered as though she were performing for an audience. Behind her, Sarah sat at the kitchen island playing the part of the perfect daughter. James, as always, slid right into the role he was expected to play, the dutiful son, smiling, laughing, offering his usual, "Oh, Mom, this looks great." That's the moment I realized I didn't fit here. And I didn't belong. I thought this dinner was going to be like the others, small talk, forced compliments, and heavy silences. But that night, something changed. After the appetizers, as Margaret and Sarah exchanged their usual helpful advice, I found myself zoning out. I could barely bring myself to eat. The air felt thick. Margaret's voice was sweet, but there was something under it, something I couldn't quite place. And when Sarah mentioned how it would be nice to hear wedding bells soon, Sophie, I had to stop myself from rolling my eyes. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. I'm just saying, Sarah continued, glancing at me with that fake smile, it's about time, right? I looked at James. He didn't notice the tension. Of course, he didn't. The drive back home was long and heavy, but not for the reasons I thought. James hummed softly to the radio, clearly unaware of the war I'd been silently fighting during dinner. I stared out the window, the streetlights blurring past like fleeting memories of something I used to care about. I didn't know how to bring it up. How do you explain to your husband that his family is slowly choking the life out of you, piece by piece? How do you say your mom and sister are slowly driving me crazy without sounding like a jealous, insecure wife who's just looking for something to complain about? By the time we walked through the door of our home, I still hadn't figured it out. I kicked my shoes off, slumped onto the couch, and watched James go straight to the kitchen. He never noticed. He just didn't. "Sophie," he called, his voice warm as he rifled through the cabinets. "Do you want some tea?" I shook my head, too tired to even fake a smile. "No, I'm good." He looked at me for a moment, then continued his search. I could feel the weight of his gaze on my back, the way he always seemed to expect me to keep it together. To be the calm one, the rock, while everything around us fell apart. I'd spent the past few months trying to keep everything in check, keeping my thoughts bottled up, forcing myself to smile through the tension at family dinners, at holidays, and at every single family gathering where I was made to feel like an outsider. It wasn't just that I felt like I didn't belong, it was that I was starting to believe I never would. The tea kettle whistled, pulling me out of my thoughts. I heard James pour the water and then place a cup in front of me. "It'll help you sleep," he said gently. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I was trying to fake it for him. I didn't want him to see the storm brewing inside me. He didn't deserve that. Not yet. "Thanks," I muttered, wrapping my fingers around the warm mug. We sat there in silence for a while, sipping our tea. It was comfortable in a way, but the silence was only making things worse. I could feel the words bubbling up inside me, begging to escape. But every time I tried to speak, the right words just wouldn't come. Then, out of nowhere, James spoke. "I don't know how they're still acting like that," he said, breaking the silence like a storm cloud bursting. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "I mean, they're family. I thought they'd have let us be by now." The words hit me like a punch. "James," I said softly, my voice cracking just a little. He looked at me, and for the first time in a while, I saw the raw emotion in his eyes. The frustration, the confusion, the hurt. He knew something was off. He just didn't know what. "I can't keep doing this," I whispered. "I don't feel like I belong anymore. I feel like I'm being pushed out." James looked at me, his face softening, and I saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. But before he could say anything, there was a knock at the door. Of course. I glanced at the clock. It was nearly 10 p.m. The last person I wanted to deal with right now was his family, but I already knew. I already knew who it was. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. James followed me to the door, his face already showing a hint of unease. When I opened it, there she was, Sarah, standing there with her usual saccharine smile plastered on her face. Her eyes darted behind me, taking in the quiet home. I immediately felt my stomach drop. "Hey, Sophie," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "I just wanted to talk. Is James home?" I nodded, but I already knew what this was. This wasn't a talk. This was a move, another maneuver to get under my skin, to remind me that I didn't matter in this family. "Come on in," I said through gritted teeth, stepping aside reluctantly. Sarah walked in without waiting for an invitation, her presence filling the room like a dark cloud. James, now standing beside me, seemed confused. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice more sharp than before. He could tell something was wrong, but couldn't quite pinpoint it. "I just wanted to see how you're doing, James," Sarah said with a soft, exaggerated sigh. "I mean, with everything that's been happening, I don't want you to be hurt. We're all just concerned, you know." I could see the way she was playing it, the concerned sister act. But there was something in her eyes that didn't match her words. She wasn't concerned. She was here to make sure her grip on James didn't slip any further. Sophie wasn't stupid. She saw the way Sarah glided through the conversation, how her eyes constantly sought approval from James. But that wasn't what bothered her the most. It was how Sarah's words, innocent on the surface, cut like knives. The things she said and didn't say were all just coded ways of controlling him, manipulating him into thinking that he needed them. "I don't need your help," James finally said, his voice steady now. He was done with the games. But Sarah wasn't having it. She tilted her head, that fake sympathy still plastered on her face. "I just want what's best for you, James. We all do." I couldn't listen anymore. The quiet rage bubbled up inside me, a fire igniting that I had no control over. I turned to James, my heart pounding. "James," I said, the words barely escaping my lips, "this isn't healthy. We can't keep letting them control us." The next few days passed in a strange haze. The weight of what had happened with Sarah lingered in the air, an uncomfortable tension that seemed to settle in every corner of the house. James and I didn't talk about it much, we didn't need to. The silence between us was enough. But when I caught him staring at his phone late at night, scrolling through messages from his family, I felt my heart twist. He didn't see the cracks forming around us and didn't understand that every time he responded to them, he was reinforcing the very thing that made me feel like I was slowly disappearing. That night, when I finally broke the silence, I was standing in the kitchen, hands shaking as I cleaned the dishes. I had no idea why I was even doing it. Maybe it was the only thing that kept me from screaming. "James," I said, my voice breaking the quiet. He looked up, his brow furrowed. "What's wrong?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. I can't do this anymore. You're not seeing it. You're not seeing how much they're controlling us, how much they've controlled you." He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off, feeling a mixture of frustration and exhaustion pouring out. "They've made me feel like I don't belong in my own home, James. And you don't see it. You just go along with it. You can't keep excusing their behavior. I can't keep living like this." James stood up from his chair, slowly crossing the room to stand beside me. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his expression soft but conflicted. "You know I love you, right? I'm just trying to keep things balanced. I don't want to lose you." "But you're already losing me," I whispered, the words sounding heavier than I expected. "You're not seeing that I'm already drowning in their control. You're letting them win." I could see the pain in his eyes. He wanted to understand, but he couldn't. Not yet. Not until he realized just how deep the manipulation went. It wasn't just about dinner conversations or subtle comments anymore. It was about control, and I was suffocating under the weight of it. We spent the rest of the evening in strained silence, the distance between us growing by the minute. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore, or Margaret. It was about everything I had ever hoped for, everything I had tried to build, and how it was slipping through my fingers. My hopes of being accepted by this family, my dreams of building a life with James free from the chains of his mother's expectations, all of it was crumbling. The next day, as if on cue, the family drama reared its ugly head again. It was Sarah, of course. This time, she didn't even bother with subtlety. She showed up uninvited, standing at our doorstep in a coat that was too fashionable for the season, a smile that felt too wide as if she had already won something. Her message was clear: she wasn't going to stop. And she was going to drag James back into the family drama whether he liked it or not. James, she cooed, with that saccharine sweetness that had always rubbed me the wrong way. I really think it's time we all had a serious talk about the future. You know, with everything that's happened, it's so important to put family first. I didn't wait for James to respond. Instead, I stepped forward, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. You need to leave, I said, my voice steady though my heart was pounding. We're not doing this again, Sarah. You're not welcome here. Her smile faltered for a second, just a flicker of vulnerability before she masked it with a fake laugh. I'm just trying to help, Sophie, she said. Why are you being so difficult? Because I'm done pretending I'm okay with your games, I snapped, the anger finally bubbling up from deep inside. You've been playing a part, a role, and you've been using us for years. But I'm not playing anymore. For a moment, Sarah stood there, stunned. And then she did something that shocked me more than anything else she'd ever done. She broke down, her tears spilling over, though I wasn't sure if they were real. I just want things to be normal, she cried, almost sounding genuine for a second. I don't want to lose my family. The moment passed. I looked at her, really looked at her, and at that moment I realized something. I had never seen Sarah for who she really was. She wasn't just a manipulator, she was a scared little girl clinging to the idea of a perfect family at any cost, even if it meant destroying the ones around her. I didn't soften. I couldn't. You're not going to get away with it anymore, Sarah. This ends today. I stepped back, glancing at James, who was standing there in silence, his face unreadable. I could see the confusion and hurt in his eyes, the pull of loyalty to his family warring with the love he felt for me. But I also saw something else, something I hadn't seen in a long time, the faintest glimmer of understanding. Update. The next few days felt like walking through a fog. It wasn't just the lingering tension in the air or the way every conversation with James felt like an interrogation. It was like the house, our once peaceful home, had become a battleground, and no matter how much I tried to keep the peace, the war was right there beneath the surface, waiting to explode. I couldn't get Sarah's breakdown out of my head. I kept replaying her words over and over, the vulnerability in her voice, and yet, I knew it wasn't real. I knew it was just another game. She was good at pretending. She always had been. But I couldn't help wondering, what was she really trying to protect? What was she hiding? It wasn't until that evening when the house was quiet and James had gone out to run some errands that I found the key to unraveling it all. I had been cleaning up the kitchen, mindlessly wiping down counters, when I noticed something on the kitchen counter, a letter. It wasn't addressed to me, but it had a name written on it that immediately caught my attention: David, my father-in-law. The letter was old, its edges yellowed, and it was sealed with the kind of wax stamp that reminded me of something from an old family heirloom. My curiosity got the better of me, and without really thinking, I opened it. As soon as I read the first few lines, my heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just a letter. It was a journal entry, a confession, a betrayal. In the letter, David was recounting a conversation with Margaret, my mother-in-law, from years ago. He spoke of how Margaret had made sure that James would never be too independent. He went on to say that they'd always seen Sophie, me, as an outsider, someone who didn't understand their family dynamics, someone who didn't belong. But what really made my blood run cold was the part where he mentioned Sarah. Apparently, Sarah had been the one orchestrating it all. While Margaret played the good mother, constantly involving James in family matters, it was Sarah who was pulling the strings behind the scenes. The letter described how Sarah had manipulated James into making decisions against his will, using guilt to tie him to their family even tighter. It was Sarah, not Margaret, who had caused the most damage, who had done everything she could to keep James emotionally tethered to the family to ensure that no one ever truly left. I could hardly breathe as I read the rest of the letter. This wasn't just about family dinners or weekend visits. This was a well-planned campaign to keep James under control, to ensure that he never fully stood up for himself, and to make sure I was never truly accepted. I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was as if the ground had just opened up beneath me. All this time, I thought it was Margaret and her passive-aggressive comments that were the problem. But it was Sarah. Sarah had been the one creating the chaos. And now I had the proof. I barely had time to process what I'd read when I heard the front door creak open. I quickly shoved the letter into my back pocket, the weight of the paper burning against my skin. James walked into the kitchen, his face lighting up when he saw me standing by the counter. But I didn't smile back. I didn't feel like smiling anymore. Hey, he said, a little more cheerfully than usual. How are you? I could hear the hesitation in his voice, like he knew something was wrong but couldn't quite place it. He walked over and kissed my forehead, his usual gesture of affection. But I couldn't focus on that. Not anymore. James, I said, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. I found something today. His smile faltered slightly and I could see his eyes narrow with concern. What do you mean? I pulled the letter from my pocket, holding it out to him. I found this. He took it from my hands, his brows furrowing as he read the first few lines. His expression changed from curiosity to confusion to something darker. Where did you get this? I found it in the kitchen, I said quietly. It's from your dad. It's about Sarah. James's face went pale as he continued to read. I could see the muscles in his jaw tightening, his grip on the paper growing firmer. He didn't say anything for a long time, his eyes scanning the words, the silence between us thick and suffocating. Finally, he set the letter down on the table and looked at me. Sophie. I don't know what to say. I didn't want him to say anything. I didn't want his excuses. I didn't want him to tell me that everything would be fine or that they were just family. I wanted him to see what I had seen, to realize that this wasn't just about dinner or hurt feelings. This was about power. This was about control. James, I said, my voice shaking, your family has been manipulating you. And me. For years. It's not just dinner parties or your mom's passive-aggressive comments. It's deeper than that. It's them. James didn't respond immediately, but I could see the shift in him. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The look in his eyes had changed. The confusion was fading, replaced by something else, the beginning of understanding. You didn't know, did you? I asked softly. You didn't know how much they've been controlling everything. He shook his head, his voice tight. No. I didn't. I had no idea. I felt a pang of guilt, but I couldn't take back what I had said. He needed to hear it. We both did. I can't keep doing this, I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. I can't keep pretending that it's okay, that you're okay. That we're okay. James walked over to me, his face filled with pain, regret, and something else I hadn't seen before, vulnerability. I'm sorry, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I had no idea. I should have seen it. I should have protected you. I looked at him, my heart heavy with everything that had happened, everything I had endured. But at that moment I realized something. For the first time I wasn't the only one hurting. He had been in the dark too. We were both victims of the family web. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a fight against them. This was the beginning of something else. Something we were going to fight together. The days following the letter felt like they were slipping through my fingers. I couldn't quite grasp the full extent of everything that was happening. On the surface, things seemed almost normal, we carried on with our lives and went through the motions. But underneath, there was a heavy hum of unspoken words, a weight that pressed down on us, pushing us further apart. James was quieter than usual. He spent more time with his phone, furiously texting his family, or at least, that's what I assumed. He wasn't ready to confront them, not fully. It wasn't that I blamed him, I knew how much he loved his family, how deeply ingrained they were in his life. But the longer he stayed in that space of maybe if I just ignore it, it'll go away, the further away we drifted. I tried to be patient, but I was suffocating. I wanted to scream, to throw everything I had at him and force him to see just how deep this was. I wanted to tear down the walls and expose the rotten core of this family, but I couldn't do it alone. I had already taken the first step by confronting Sarah. I knew I couldn't do this without him. And yet I felt myself losing hope that he'd ever really see what I was seeing. It was a Friday night when things finally tipped over the edge. James and I had decided to have a quiet night in, just the two of us. We made dinner together, something simple, pasta and wine, a ritual we had when we wanted to forget about the world. But as we sat down at the table, something was off. I could feel it, this undercurrent of tension. I was halfway through a bite when James suddenly set his fork down. He was staring at his phone, his face pale. What is it? I asked, my heart skipping a beat. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. I watched him, waiting. Finally, he looked at me, his eyes full of something I couldn't place. Sophie, I just got a message from Sarah. It's bad, he said, his voice tight. She sent me something. I set my fork down, feeling the pit in my stomach grow. What is it? James hesitated as if weighing whether he should show me. I wasn't sure if it was the fear of confronting the truth or if he was still holding on to the hope that things could somehow stay the same. Finally, he slid the phone across the table to me. It was a video. A recording. And it was of Sarah standing in front of a camera, her voice barely audible over the crackling noise of a dimly lit room. I need to tell you something, James, she began. I've been holding this in for a long time, but I can't anymore. I can't let this go on. I felt my heartbeat race. My hands shook as I clicked play. The video continued, Sarah's voice was shaky but determined. You know how Sophie always says that things are fine? How does she pretend she's okay with everything? Well, I'm telling you she's not. She's been manipulating you this whole time, trying to turn you against your family. She's isolating you, making you think that everything we do is wrong. She's poisoning your mind. I froze. The words hit me like a slap, a punch to the gut that left me gasping for air. Sarah, you can't be serious, I whispered, my voice shaking. But there was more. Sarah went on to talk about how Sophie wasn't a part of the family and how James should be careful about the kind of people he let into his life. How my outsider status was a threat to the family's unity. And of course, the usual, I only want what's best for you. It was all lies. Every single word. I looked up at James, my eyes wide with disbelief. James, this is insane. She's lying. She's twisting everything. James didn't say anything. He just stared at the phone, at the video, the words sinking deeper into the space between us. I don't know what to say, Sophie, he finally muttered, his voice hollow. This isn't what I thought it was. I thought she was just trying to help. I could feel the sting of betrayal in my chest. He was still seeing it from her perspective, still trapped in the web of lies. But this was beyond that. No, I said, my voice firm now. This isn't about help. This is manipulation. She's been pulling your strings for years. She's been doing this since day one. James' eyes flickered with something, uncertainty, confusion, and for the first time in a long time I saw the cracks in his perfect little world. I don't know what to believe anymore, Sophie. I don't know who to trust. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You don't have to trust them, James. You don't have to keep pretending everything is okay when it's not. I'm not asking you to choose me over them. I'm asking you to choose yourself. To see what's been right in front of you. Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at him, hoping, no, praying that he could see the truth now. That he could finally see us without the fog of his family's expectations clouding his judgment. He didn't speak for a long time. And for that moment I felt like we were on the edge of a cliff, each of us standing on opposite sides of it. But then he did something I never expected. He stood up, walked toward me, and took my hand in his. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like we were both finally on the same page. Update. The days after that night were filled with a strange stillness. It wasn't peace though. It wasn't even close. I kept waiting for the inevitable storm to break, for the family to come crashing through the door with their accusations, their manipulation, their perfect smiles, and their perfect lies. But it didn't happen. At least not yet. James was different though. I could see it. The walls that had once seemed so solid between us, the walls built by his family's expectations, their whispers, their lies, were starting to crack. Slowly, hesitantly, but they were cracking. But that didn't mean it was over. I could feel it in the air. The calm before the real storm. It was late one night, 2 days after the confrontation with Sarah, when I was sitting alone in the living room, the soft glow of the TV the only light in the room. I hadn't expected James to be home so late. He told me he was going to run some errands, some last-minute thing that came up. But as I stared at the flickering screen, I heard the familiar sound of the door opening, followed by the soft shuffle of footsteps. It was him. I didn't even look up at first, just trying to get through the last few minutes of the show I was half-watching. But then I heard something that made my heart skip a beat. Sophie? James' voice was low, almost hesitant. I looked up, surprised to see him standing there in the doorway. His face was pale, his eyes dark with exhaustion. He was holding something in his hands, and as I watched him, I could tell that something was off. What's wrong? I asked, sitting up on the couch. My heart was racing now. I need to show you something, James said, his voice tight. He stepped forward, holding out a thick envelope, one of those heavy, official-looking ones. My stomach turned as I took it from him. The weight of it alone felt like it was too much for my hands to carry. I ran my thumb over the corner of the envelope, the cold paper against my skin. What is this? It's from Sarah, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She sent it to me today. It was on the doorstep when I got back. I opened it carefully, the sense of dread in the pit of my stomach growing with each passing second. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper. It wasn't just a letter. It was a demand. As I scanned the words, my throat tightened. It was a letter from Sarah, but it wasn't the apology I'd expected. No. It was an ultimatum. She was giving us an ultimatum. A choice. I want what's best for our family, the letter began. But you've made it impossible for me to keep trying. Sophie is driving you away. She's taken you from us. She's isolated you. You need to choose. You either leave her or you lose all of us. You've been manipulated, James. It's time to wake up. It was cold and calculated, and it hit me harder than anything Sarah had ever done before. This wasn't just a game anymore. This was war. I looked up at James, his face pale as he stared at the letter in my hands. His eyes were wide, his lips trembling slightly, and I could see the weight of the decision on him. He was torn. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? What could I possibly say that would make him see the truth? The fact that Sarah had come this far, that she was willing to tear us apart, to use her own family as leverage, made my blood run cold. But it was what she said next that really shook me to my core. I've already told Mom and Dad. If you don't make the right choice, if you don't put family first, I'm going to tell everyone what she's really like. I'll tell them about how she's been manipulating you. How she's been turning you against everyone. They'll never accept her. It was a threat. A real threat. Sarah wasn't just trying to control James, she was trying to ruin me. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling as I set the letter down. My mind raced. The world felt like it was spinning out of control. I could feel the walls closing in. James stood there, completely still, his eyes fixed on the letter. I didn't know what was going through his mind. I didn't know how to make him see the truth, see Sarah for what she really was. James, I whispered, my voice breaking, you can't let her do this to us. You can't let her tear us apart. We fought so hard to be together. You fought so hard to keep her out of our lives, to make us work. You can't just give up now. For a long time, he didn't say anything. He just stood there, looking at the letter in my hands, the weight of it crushing both of us. Finally, he spoke, his voice small. I don't know what to do anymore, Sophie. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to fix her. And that's when I realized something that hit me harder than anything else. I couldn't fix this. I couldn't fix James' family. And maybe that was the point. I couldn't save him from them. All I could do was make him see it, see what they were doing to him, to us. You don't have to fix anything, I said softly, stepping forward and taking his hand in mine. But you do have to choose. You have to choose us, James. You have to choose me. He looked at me, and for a second I saw the flicker of understanding in his eyes. I'm not going to lose you, he whispered. I didn't know if it was the truth yet, but it was all I had left. The days that followed were a blur of tension and silence. It felt like we were living in a suspended moment, just waiting for something, anything, to break. I kept my distance from James, letting him process everything in his own way, though every moment felt like it was slipping away, like I was slowly losing him to the family he was trying so desperately to hold onto. But in the back of my mind, I knew I couldn't keep pretending that this would just fix itself. Something had to give. One evening, after a long, exhausting day, I sat on the porch, my legs tucked under me, staring out at the horizon. The world felt quiet, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that carried weight. The kind that made every passing moment feel like a countdown to something inevitable. Then the door creaked open behind me, and I didn't need to look up to know who it was. James stood in the doorway, his figure a silhouette against the dim light inside. I could feel the heaviness of his footsteps as he approached me, his presence filling the air with unspoken words. Sophie, he said, his voice low, hesitant. I didn't respond immediately, still staring ahead, trying to piece together the shattered pieces of everything I'd ever believed about us. I knew this moment was coming, but it still felt like I was caught in a storm. Can we talk? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. I need to say something. I turned slowly to face him, forcing myself to breathe through the weight in my chest. What is it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He took a step closer, looking at me with a mixture of guilt and sorrow. I've been thinking a lot about what you said about us, about everything. And I think I finally get it. He paused, his eyes searching mine as if trying to find the right words. I've been so focused on keeping my family happy that I didn't see what I was doing to you. I didn't see how much they were controlling us. I thought I could balance it, be the son they wanted and the husband you needed. But it was never enough. And now I see how much I failed you. My heart skipped a beat. These were the words I had been waiting for, the ones I'd been hoping for. But even as they filled the silence between us, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to come. A twist, a blow that would change everything. He took another step closer, and this time his hand found mine. His touch was warm, comforting, but there was still a heaviness that made the moment feel fragile. Sophie, he said, his voice shaking, I've made my choice. I'm done. I'm done with the guilt, the manipulation, the control. I'm choosing you, and I'm going to fight for us. Relief washed over me in waves. I felt my chest loosen, the knot that had been tightening for weeks finally giving way. I wanted to smile, to laugh, to cry, but something held me back. A nagging feeling, a voice whispering that this wasn't the end, that we hadn't truly faced what was coming. Then, in that moment of peace, the doorbell rang. I froze. James looked at me, his face paling. Neither of us moved. We both knew what that ring meant. Should I get it? He asked quietly, as if hoping I'd tell him to ignore it, to pretend it wasn't happening. But I knew that if we didn't face this now, it would follow us forever. We need to deal with this, I said softly, my voice steady despite the fear rising in my chest. We walked to the door together, our footsteps almost in sync. I opened it slowly, and there, standing on the other side, was Sarah. She was holding a manila envelope in her hands, her eyes red, her face twisted with a mixture of anger and desperation. James, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I hope you're ready for the truth. I felt James stiffen beside me, his hand tightening around mine. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. What is this, Sarah? She smiled a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You really think it's all over, don't you? You think you can just walk away from everything and pretend that nothing's happened. But you're wrong. She handed him the envelope, and I could see the tension in his jaw as he ripped it open. Inside, there was a thick stack of papers. My heart sank as I saw the first line. Legal action to contest marriage validity. Couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. Sarah, I whispered, almost too stunned to speak. You're going to use this against us? She didn't answer. She just stood there watching us, waiting for the storm to hit. You'll never be part of this family, she said, her voice cold now, the mask of sweetness slipping away. Not as long as I'm breathing. I watched as James's face turned pale, his grip on the envelope tightening until his knuckles turned white. For a moment I saw him falter. I saw the weight of his decision, the gravity of everything that had led us here. But then he did something I didn't expect. He tore the envelope in half, letting the papers fall to the ground like confetti. His face hardened, the man I had always known finally coming to the surface. I'm done, Sarah. This is over. You're not going to control me anymore. He turned back to me, his eyes meeting mine with determination. Sophie, we're moving forward. Together. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The beginning of a life without the shadows of his family looming over us. A life where we could finally breathe, where we could finally be free. The door slammed shut behind us, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt the weight of their expectations fall away. It wasn't just the family drama that had been controlling us. It was our fear of losing each other, of not being strong enough to face the truth. But now we had each other, and nothing, not even blood, could change that. So here's the question. If you were in Sophie's shoes, would you be able to walk away from a family that you've spent years trying to fit into? Would you be able to break free from the toxic expectations and choose your happiness, even if it meant losing everything you once thought you wanted? What would you do? Hope you enjoyed this story as much as I do. Help this small channel grow by hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. Every bit of support means the world. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.